to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor, and Autumn is listening to me. She's sitting in the audience listening to me. She's looking at me very intensely. So, Autumn, today I want to talk about my Etsy store. And I also wanted to talk about, I wanted to summarize the steps of my sobriety program. And then I want to talk about unmanageability. And the reason why I wanted to talk about the steps of the sobriety program is because I can't tell you how many times I have said, I wish people who did not have a problem with drinking had this program for life because it really has been um, so integral in my just having a blueprint for how to live. I didn't have that. I mean, nobody has that, but it's like some people figure it out. Some people, don't figure it out and they don't care. And other people like me can't figure it out and beat myself up for it and try to find other ways, shortcuts, don't want to do the hard work and try to ignore anything that's painful. So I wanted to talk about what the steps are there. I think there are a lot of misconceptions about the 12 steps. And so I just thought I'd share my experience with them. Since I'm going to talk about all 12 steps, I'm going to do it really briefly. I'm just going to tell you what the step means to me. That's it. And then I wanted to talk about unmanageability because a memory bubble came up for me today that I don't know that I shared with you. I'm probably wrong. I mean, we've been doing this for a couple years, so I probably did say it at some point, but I was revisiting that idea of unmanageability in my second morning meeting. And and the way that it goes in our meetings, well, in my 7 a.m. meeting, is we go by the month. The steps align with the month of the year. So for January, we will be talking a lot of our literature will be talking about step one and unmanageability, admitting complete powerlessness. So typically, the themes of my podcast episode are aligning with that as well, because that's the stuff that's coming up for me every month is what is being focused on in the literature a lot of times. And I talk about how that applies to my sobriety, but also how I intertwine all of that into my holistic recovery, my dual recovery, my stroke recovery. So let's start with the fun stuff. I mean, it's all fun, right? The steps are fun. The steps are fun. But the Etsy store. So I've been working over the past year learning new hobbies. And some of those hobbies are painting and crocheting. And gosh, I've tried some hobbies that just didn't work out. I was doing, I don't even remember what it was called now, but it's when you can make like see-through acrylic stuff. I'm totally getting a mind blank now. Anyway, some people like will put dried flowers in, and it's like a liquid, and then it hardens over the 24 hours. Sorry, I'm totally having a complete brain fart. I hate saying brain fart. That's so unattractive. But anyway, that hobby didn't really work out for me. Candle making, jewelry making. My daughter gave me a tufting set with the frame and everything. So if you're not familiar with tufting, look it up on YouTube. I am ready to start tufting. I've educated myself on what this hobby is because she gave it to me and I had no idea what it even was. So it's making rugs, is what it looks like. So that's going to be my new hobby this year. I haven't started yet, just in the process of educating myself, but I'm super excited to have another hobby. So all of these things I mentioned yesterday, I want to do them, but I didn't know, like, once I have a product, like, what do I do with it? Like, I don't want 10 million candles. I don't want, I mean, I love jewelry, but there's only so much jewelry that I can wear, seeing that I don't leave the house very much. And then sewing is stuff that I love sewing, making quilts. I like making outfits, but I really need to get another mannequin, to do that because my current mannequin is now displaying a plethora of brooches. It's a piece of art. So, what do I do with all of this stuff that I'm painting and doing? And well, I thought, why don't I just have an Etsy store? And so I created an Etsy store. It's the basics of an Etsy store. I've never done this before. So I put an about me page up there and I loaded a bunch of the stuff that I've made. And I'm not, being too cocky, I think, when I say the stuff is pretty groovy. I'm just going to say that. But what one thing that's intertwined in this idea of having an Etsy store that supports my recovery, creative recovery, is the fact that a lot of it is upcycled stuff. So transformation, healing, and resilience is the theme of my life, really. And as a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor, I've focused a lot on renewal, and that's both physically and emotionally. And my projects that I work on are a reflection of that. My dogs are playing and they are attacking each other and running all over the room. So I'm a little distracted, but I'm going to keep going. Um, so I have found a lot of purpose in repurposing and having to create or follow a new trajectory, away from the career that I loved in marketing. I am bringing forward that my love for creativity, and I'm hoping that what can happen is by also having an Etsy store that may, bring people over to joining this community of, recovering daily. So things that are typically cast aside, I like to take them and breathe new life into them. So my sister actually bid on some old nasty, I'm going to say some nasty jewelry. It stunk. And I won the bid. I won the bid. This was in like an auction in Berryville. So I won the bid. I got this stinky box of jewelry. Yes, it stunk. And so I spent, like, gosh, 2 months cleaning all the jewelry and categorizing it into like bead necklaces and brooches and earrings, silver, fake gold, and that kind of stuff. And repurposing it into new jewelry. And I'm hoping that some of the extras can also be incorporated into, some of my sewing crafts, like earring, like a really pretty heart bling bling earring that's like, um, red and diamondy looking, can be used as a button. for example. So I really love doing that. It's kind of exciting. I'm also interested in making earrings out of different bead necklaces and maybe making some brooches. So I don't know if you knew this, but brooches are back in. It's something that my grandmother wore, and she had a huge inventory of brooches, and that's where this my interest in brooches started because myself, my mom, and my sister all had some brooches of my grandmother's. So um, they were so nice to give them over to me in order to display them on this mannequin that I have, and they look so pretty all together and not sitting in a drawer. So I love taking things that are broken or stinky and seeing its potential and turning them into something beautiful. So this all started when I got sober and I needed something to do with my hands. And I started upcycling furniture. So my most proud and first upcycling piece was a very old, stinky baby closet that was like what left out in the rain. A baby closet's like a dresser kind of, but it has like a cabinet where you would hang dresses inside. And so I stripped the outside and really sanded it down to beautiful wood. And I ended up staining the wood and kind of re-architecting the drawers and the shelves and turned it into a coffee bar. And we used it in my dining room up until we moved to this new house. So I really enjoy it, and it was important in the beginning of sobriety to keep me busy and keep me focused on something positive and not sitting around on the weekends. That was important to me. So this has just evolved into I started making baskets with old clothes. I would clean clothes, they weren't stinky. And I stripped them into strips and then braided the strips and then sewed them into a basket. And it just continues to evolve. So I have been obsessed with the all the pill bottles that I have, and I kept thinking, what can I do with these pill bottles? And you lifetime listeners know that I ended up making them into pots. So you take the lid of the pill bottle and put it underneath and drill a hole in the bottom of the pill bottle. And it's a tiny little petite pot. And so I paint some sort of landscape picture on the outside of the bottle and seal it. And it's a symbol to me of finding purpose and hope in the face of adversity. It quite literally is something that I needed because of my invisible illnesses. And yet I'm able to repurpose them and find beauty in it, just like um, we find beauty and new purpose with disabilities and our challenges and stuff. So the Etsy shop is not just a thing where I'm trying to make money. It is a thing that's trying to keep me um, in hope and keep me focused on my purpose and repurposing. Keep me focused on connecting with people who have the same interests as me and people who have the same challenges as me. I get to use my passion for being creative, my passion for not being wasteful, and create art that reflects both challenges and beauty in recovery. So that's where I'm at with it. I'm trying to make it so you can find the Etsy store, and I haven't quite figured out how to do that. Like, even if you put in recovery upcycling in the search field, it does not show my store. So I'm still trying to work through um, optimizing search engine optimization for my Etsy shop. So I'll keep you informed so that I can make it easier for you to find it. But if you are interested in seeing all the fun stuff that I make and how I spend my time, um, I'll put a link to the Etsy store in the description of the episode so you can check it out. And I've been adding stuff to it. Almost daily, just because I had stuff backed up in my drawers and stuff. Excuse me for 1 second. Boris, stop licking Autumn's ear. Thank you. Okay, sorry. Okay, so enough about my Etsy store for now. So I wanted to switch gears and just share with you my understanding, my experience with the 12 steps of my sobriety program. So I encourage you when I'm talking about this, and again, I don't want to hone on long. I don't want to drone. That's the word. I don't want to drone on and on about this. I just want to introduce you folks that who are not, and I know there's quite a few of you out there who are not in sobriety and are listening to the podcast because you're a stroke survivor or you suffer from chronic pain as well, or even depression, anxiety, eating disorder, you name it. All of us are recovering in some way. So I encourage you to think about how these steps might apply to the challenges that you face in your life. So if I mention the word alcohol, you might want to replace that word with something like my disability. And I wanted to encourage that because that's what I did with my stroke. I had 5 years of experience with my sobriety program when I had my stroke. And it didn't occur to me for the first 2 years after my stroke that this was really a life-changing event in my life. I know that sounds weird, but it didn't occur to me how much my life was going to change when I first had my stroke because I was in denial and I was going to do whatever it took to go back to work and make my life be exactly the way it was before my stroke. And it turns out I didn't have control over that. I had to admit complete powerlessness over the fact that I had a stroke, over my disability. So that's why I know that it works because I have taken the steps of my sobriety program and I have applied it to stroke recovery. And I'm telling you, it has kept me emotionally sober. It has kept me um, having the ability to be mindful, to be present, to be very engaged in what's going on between my ears. And Boris, stop licking her ear. He can't lick her ear because she gets an ear infection because he has nasty saliva that's like super thick and gets all gunked up in her ear. I know that's disgusting, but we need to tell the truth here. Sorry, Boris. Okay, so number one, step one, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. When I had my stroke, same thing, I went out on my front porch. So this was 2 years later when I recognized that the pain, the chronic pain I was experiencing was something that I couldn't control and that something had to change in my life because I simply could not function anymore. My life had become unmanageable. And so that is how it, step one was the introduction to, it was an epiphany for me. I was like, at the same time that I was crying, sitting on my front porch, recognizing that my life all of a sudden was going to be different forever. Um, I also realized that I had the tools that I needed to work with this challenge. So number two, step two, came to believe in a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So a lot of people equate this to God. In the beginning, I equated this to anything outside of myself. The point was that I could not restore myself to sanity. I could not be emotionally balanced if I was only depending on myself in order to fix myself, that there a power greater than me, which can be a support community, it can be your faith, a power greater than me, outside of me, was capable of restoring me back to that sanity, emotional balance. Number three is made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. So this uh, sometimes is, what's the word, is an obstacle for people who don't have faith in a God of their understanding. They're like, no, this program isn't for me. Well, you can replace God if you want to with anything outside of yourself. Again, the point is to turn over your will, is stop doing it my way. And now I'm going to start listening, and I'm going to start being open to having guidance for how to deal with these challenges. So what I had to do is I had to go back to the doctor. I did more and more begin to start turning my will over to God as I understand Him. And even that understanding of God for me continues to evolve. And I get to do that because my program, Rachel's program, allows me to do that. Number four, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So this is also one where people get tripped up, because this is where we have to start looking inward, and we really have to start making a list of everything outside of ourselves that is bothering us. So a moral inventory of ourselves in this case, in sobriety, is making a list of, to put it simply, making a list of everybody that's pissing you off. But there's so much more to that. And I think when I entered into stroke recovery full time, I needed to make a list of all of the stuff that I couldn't control, that needed to be addressed. I needed help with, and then I made a list of the things that I needed help with. Um, and then number five is admitting to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So I'm looking at that list and I'm talking to somebody about, okay, where did I go wrong here? What could I have done to make this relationship easier, to give instead of constantly take? Where can I be a better human being? Um, and really acknowledging, not to beat myself up. Like when I finally had to submit that, I my stroke recovery had to come first. Like I had to start not above sobriety, but my recovery had to come first. And when I did that for stroke recovery, I had to recognize all the stuff that I was ignoring about my stroke, about my disability, about my pain, the emotional pain, the fear. Oh my gosh. I told you yesterday, I still have a lot of fear, and I want to continue to talk about that fear. And the best way that I can deal with fear is stare it straight in the eye, and say, okay, I am afraid of you, but I'm not afraid to talk about it, because as soon as I start communicating, and that was a big theme for me this morning when we were talking about the 12 steps, was how important communication is. Like, I needed to get help. I had to admit complete powerlessness over my stroke. And the way that I had to do that was just reach out to doctors. When I had to start looking at, like, where have I gone wrong and why are things so painful for me right now, physically and emotionally, I had to start talking to people. I had to ask for, are there support groups? I started going to quite a few support groups in order to find a home somewhere that there were people like me and that we could exchange stories about that pain. And I could finally feel like I'm not alone. I may not be able to control what's going on, but there are pieces that I can take action on. Number 6 was to be entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So this is like an inward job. I I really struggled with this in the beginning, step 6, where I didn't really have a clear understanding, like God as I understand him. I didn't understand him. I heard once in one of my meetings, somebody said, and God as I don't understand him. And I'm like, yes, that's it. It's God as I don't understand him. So I just started acting as if and praying to a God as I don't understand him. And that was okay with me. Like, it worked for me. So I love the flexibility of the steps, of the program, really, because the steps stay the word God. The program gives you the flexibility to replace God with whatever it is that you want to replace it with. But step 6 is this inward job where you're being entirely ready. You're making a decision. You're opening the door. For me, step 6 is I am no longer closed. I'm willing. I'm willing and I'm open-minded. Step 7 is humbly asking him to remove our shortcomings. This is another thing that has always really tripped me up. It really has, still to this day. Humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. What I believe is that when I am self-aware and I see my own shortcomings after I've made a list of all the stuff that I may have done wrong, the reasons why I'm in this pain, how can I change things in my life in order to make my life more joyful, more pain-free, um, humbly asking him to remove our shortcomings. When I recognize that, then I am able to do something about it. So I'm able to humbly reach out to people and have, I am not trying to do it on my own. I'm making sure that every step of the way, I am humbly asking for help. So take that as you will. Step 8, made a list of all persons that we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And nine is where you make direct amends to wherever, to people wherever it's possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So steps 8 and 9 were really important to me in my stroke recovery. And I'll tell you why. Because there's a lot of shit that I had to deal with where either insurance companies didn't know what the hell they were doing, doctors didn't know what the hell they were doing, but they had an answer, you know? It's like, you know, how you, when you ask somebody at work how you do something and they give you an answer, but it's pretty clear to you, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Well, that stuff is so entirely aggravating. Like when you don't know how to do something, just say I don't know. Just say I don't know. It's an acceptable answer. Well, when these people were just giving me answers, whether they were right or wrong, or they were misguided by other people and just communicating back to me, you know, sorry, you're going to be denied for long-term disability. What? You know, that kind of stuff. I had every instinct in me wanted to be a complete bitch to these people who were not doing as I wanted them to do. They were doing things their way, and it was the wrong way. You know what I'm talking about. Well, I remembered my experience with steps 8 and 9, and I remembered that if not in stroke recovery, then in sobriety recovery, I have to make amends to people that I may mistreat, you know, that I may have reacted to instead of responded. So I have been pretty well practiced. I'm not perfect at it, progress, not perfection, but I'm pretty well practiced at when I'm ready to react to somebody, I shut my mouth instead of open it. It's literally like I have to do the opposite, like on Seinfeld, when George has to do the opposite and his life becomes fantastic. My instincts want me to open my mouth and tell these people how wrong they are and what is the right way to do it. And I shut my mouth instead because I don't want to have to go back and make amends to such people. And in the times that I did this, when I shut my mouth instead of reacting, it it benefited me greatly. These people were still on Team Rachel in stroke recovery because I was kind to them. They were just doing their job, and maybe this is complex stuff, you know. Strokes are there are stroke specialists, migraine specialists, all of these neuro-otologists, neuro-ophthalmologists, but anything that has to do with the brain, we're still in the dark in a lot of ways. So I have to be open and willing to have conversations with these professionals about how can we handle the situation with the information that we have? Because it's not going to get me anywhere if I tell them all to, um, go suck an egg, as my mom would say. Step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So on a daily basis, I mentioned to you, I have the prayer, the nightly prayer, where I'm looking at where was I afraid today? And I had a lot of that in stroke recovery. I have a lot of that in stroke recovery. Where was I afraid today? Did I talk to somebody about it, or am I keeping it inside? Am I isolating? And where was I angry? What did I tell off the insurance lady? That kind of thing. When I'm wrong, promptly admit it. And the goal there is to not react so that I don't have to um, promptly admit it when I'm wrong. I'm trying to avoid that. I'm trying to avoid having to make an amends to somebody, because I know that I don't like to do that. It feels so much better to be able to heal that emotional pain or aggravation inside me than have to repair a relationship and heal the pain and aggravation inside of me. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. So I have consistently done prayer and meditation, and I continue to. And this is building um, a stronger foundation that I can depend on when I feel like I'm alone. That's really the key for step 11 for me is what do I do when I'm alone? What do I do when there's nobody to tell? What do I do when nobody's watching? That's what step 11 helps me with. And 12, have a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. We try to carry these messages to alcoholics and practice these principles in all of our affairs. That's what I'm doing now. Having a spiritual awakening is what the step says. The step does not say you became religious. It's not the same thing. Having a spiritual awakening, I am more aware of what's going on between my ears, and I want to let other people know how much these steps have helped me. And I want it to help people who aren't even alcoholics because we practice these principles in all of our affairs. I don't have to be drinking in order to know that my mind is thinking wrong. And these steps help me to improve my thinking. And if I improve my thinking, that keeps me away from a drink. It keeps me hopeful in stroke recovery. So those are the 12 steps of my sobriety program. And those are the 12 steps that I have applied to my stroke recovery. And I'm hoping that it came across okay, the way that I replaced words in order to make it work for me. Because I wasn't trying to fit the steps into my, let's see. I was trying to fit the steps into my life. I wasn't just taking the steps word for word the way that they appear. Um, I was desperate. I was going to die if I didn't find a way to stop drinking. And in stroke recovery, when I was sitting on my front porch crying and realizing my life once again had become completely unmanageable and I had to do something about it, I felt like I was emotionally dying. I felt like everything had just been ripped out from under me. And I was desperate once again to have something that I could rely on, that I trusted, that was going to pull me back out. And the steps of the program did that for me. Um, so what really came out to me this morning as one of the most important parts about all of this was my communication, that when things get hard, I crawl inside of myself and I stop talking. And that's what happened in both right before I got sober and right before I admitted that I needed to walk away from my job because I couldn't do it anymore. I was in too much pain. Um, in both of those circumstances, what I had to do was reach out to somebody. Um, and that takes a lot of courage to reach out to somebody. And the memory bubble that came up for me this morning that I wanted to share is when I was in detox for the first time, I think. It was the first time. Yeah, it was the first time that I was in detox. So they put me on a walker for 3 days because of my withdrawal symptoms. I was a fall risk. I had the big sign on my door that said fall risk, and I was just super unsteady on my feet and stuff. I think I did mention, maybe I did mention this. I mentioned that I blamed the doctors for the medication that they were giving me was making me feel that way. That's what I thought. I mean, I truly thought that, but it was my withdrawal from alcohol was so bad that that I needed a walker. I was unstable. On the fourth day, I think it was the fourth day, I was laying, it was dinner time. And I retreated back to my room as I had for the first 3 days because I couldn't do that. I couldn't go to dinner. So we would all get together and go to this cafeteria in the facility and eat dinner together. And I would retreat, turn the lights off, and crawl into bed because I didn't want to have to talk to people. Well, on the fourth day, the nurse came into my room and she turned on the light and opened the door, and she was like, "We're not bringing your food to you anymore. You need to get up and come to dinner." And she was kind of mean sounding, you know? I was like, because they were being so nice to me up until that point. And then she was like, "You need to get your ass out of bed." She didn't say that, but I was like scared. So I got up and I went, even though I didn't want to. And I sat down at the table with these people that I recognized these people have been eating meals together for 3 days and I haven't been a part of it. So I was a little behind as far as being um, open and talking and laughing with these people. They already got to know each other a little bit. So I was really scared and nervous, but it was an important step. It was at that dinner where I was made to come and sit down that I sat and listened to these people. Nobody wanted to be there. It wasn't just me. Nobody wanted to be there. And yet, they were talking a little bit here and there about things. And when I was looking at each one of them, we all looked totally different. Yet I realized we're all here for the same reason. We have a common purpose. And it wasn't until much later in my sobriety meetings that that memory came back up again, where I'm like, yeah, like everybody in this meeting has had an entirely different life experience with the same disease. And it's the other thing that was coming up for me is this idea of powerlessness. And I thought, when things are going my way, um, when I was still drinking and I was working and I was married and whatever, things were going my way. It gave me this false sense of control that I had control over everything around me. This was all product of my doing. But until I recognized that I was an alcoholic, my life was unmanageable. And then I'm looking around and I'm like, this is not a product of my doing. Isn't that interesting? Like when things were not going my way, I looked at the world like this is all screwed up and it's not my fault. But when everything was going my way, it's like everything's beautiful and it's all because of me. That's funny. But what came to mind for me is how when things are going my way, I have that false sense of control. When things are not going my way, I feel like I don't have control over anything. Um, When I finally admitted that my life was unmanageable and had to go into medical retirement because of my disability and my chronic pain, I felt like I had no control. I felt like I had no idea what the future held. Um, there's nothing I can do. I'm completely powerless, right? Um, when I was taught, and it scared me. And when I was talking to my psychiatrist about this, she said, "But don't you see you didn't have control before? Um, you never have control over what the future brings." And I thought, yeah, but I at least knew what I was working with. Now I don't know what I'm even working with. Well, what I'm slowly recognizing is that I always know what I'm dealing with because I'm supposed to be focused on today. What can I do today? And I also realize over time, now this is since I've talked to my psychiatrist, that powerlessness and hope are on either side of the scale. And I need to find a balance between the two. Um, when I feel completely powerless, I have no hope. When I have a lot of hope, I feel empowered, right? And I didn't realize that until this past year when I was buying stickers on Amazon so that every time I felt hope, I would put a sticker on my mirror because I read that I need to celebrate small victories and feeling hope was a victory on any given day in early stroke recovery. So it's important that I recognize that I don't have power over people, places, and things, but I don't want that to be so heavy in my life that I lose hope. I need to, if I work on my hope and I keep doing things like finding like I my ideas that get me excited, like an Etsy store, like writing my book, like seeing if I can network with other podcast um hosts and stuff like that. That's where I get hope, I gain hope, and then I feel empowered. So anyway, it's a lot of stuff. I know that I gave you a full plate of food to chew on today, but it's good stuff, and I felt that it really falls in line with the book that I'm writing about how I have been able to apply the 12 steps of my program to my stroke recovery. And it's kept me alive. It really has. So thanks so much for listening today and have a good one. I'll talk to you tomorrow.